I manage about 3,000 of what I believe to be the best creative and program makers in the world. We deliver some of the world's biggest brands. There we are. We deliver some of the world's biggest brands, content brands that some of you will know: Top Gear, Strictly Come Dancing, Dancing with the Stars, Planet Earth and all our natural history output, and Doctor Who. I've worked in broadcast media for about 20 plus years. Previously, I ran the Travel Channel in the United States, home of Man vs. Food and Anthony Bourdain, No Reservations. I love my job. I really do love my job, because every day, all I do is go in and converse with program makers and storytellers, because that's what we are. And our job every day is to come up with new stories and new ways to engage and delight and surprise audiences. Now, my world of broadcast media is at the moment going through a period of pretty rude health. We broadcast one program to millions of people at the same time. Our viewing figures are strong. People are watching more television than ever before. And there's even talk that this is television's new golden age. And yet, I believe when it comes to the creative possibilities of transmedia, the broadcast industry is creatively paralyzed. Let me share a story with you that was told to me by my good friend and digital pioneer, Michael Rosenblum. And it's the story of a peasant in 15th century Germany. And he comes home one evening and he's miserable. And his wife says to him, "Husband, you look so down, so upset, what's wrong?" And he says, "I hate being a serf. I hate it, hate it, hate it. What I really want to be is a writer." And she looks at him and she said, "Look, as much as I love you, if you really want to be a writer that badly, I won't stand in your way. Off you go to the monastery and see if you can get a job as a writer." So off he went. He had to walk because it's the 15th century. And he walked for days and he walked for weeks. And he ended up at the monastery because the monastery was the only place that writing happened at that time. And he found the head monk, and the head monk said, "Even though I have thousands of applicants for every writing job, I'm so impressed by your perseverance and your vision, I'll give you the job." So he got a job as a trainee writer, sat at the foot of a researcher writer, who sat at the foot of an assistant producer writer, who sat at the foot of a producer writer, who worked for the executive producer of writing. And he began his career as a writer. He started off learning how to copy letters from the Bible, because that's all they did. Well, that's mainly what they did. They copied the Bible out over and over again. So he started off copying individual letters, then he moved up to words, and then sentences, and then verses, and then chapters and books of the Bible. And eventually, after 15 years, he's a writer. He's there and he's able to write whole sections of the Bible on his own, unaided. And one day, he sat down writing with his colleagues, and they heard a large clanking noise in the courtyard outside, and they all rushed. I was going to say to the window, but they didn't have windows. They all rushed to the hole in the wall, and they looked out. And one of them goes, "What's going on?" And the other one goes, "It's that idiot Gutenberg with that printing press thing of his." And the monk goes, "Oh, can you believe it? I mean, look at what we do. Look at the colors that we use. Look at the visuals that we create. Look at the real quality of the work that we produce here as monks. Look at the quality of what we do. Just look at it. And now look at what his people, look at what Gutenberg's producing. It's all in black and white. It's barely legible. It's not properly aligned. Don't worry, it will never catch on." Let's go back to work. Now, we all laugh, and we all know how that story ends. Gutenberg perfects his press, and eventually goes on to print his version, Gutenberg's Bible, which changes actually the whole relationship between the individual and the church, because individuals now have their own Bible that doesn't have to be mediated by the church. It also allows the spread of ideas, and with the spread of ideas, you have a new form of literacy, reading, because people need to and want to read this new content, and it ends up being the force that challenges kings and democratizes our society. And so the question that I ask is, are we, in the broadcast industry, at risk of acting like the monks in the face of Gutenberg? Are we at risk of irrelevancy? And if so, why? And I believe the answer is yes, and the reason is fear. fear. A strong word to use, especially when I've just said that our entire industry is in really good health in terms of ratings and all the other factors. So let me explain what I'm talking about. When you actually look, I had this problem yesterday. When you actually look for definitions of media, you come up with definitions like these. The main means of mass communication, especially television, radio, newspapers, and the internet regarded collectively. Or the means of communication as radio, television, newspapers, and magazines with wide reach and influence. I believe there's a more compelling definition, and it was shared with me by Ralph Rivera, who's the head of future media at the BBC. When you ask Ralph what is media, Ralph will tell you that media is what happens at the intersection of storytelling and technology. Media is what happens at the interface of storytelling and technology. To go all the way back to the Neolithic age, when the technology is sticks and hands and ochre made from mud and water, the media was wall paintings. People captured their stories on walls in caves, and that was the media of their day. When we move on to the invention of papyrus, the media becomes the written word and manuscripts, and then with the advent of the printing press, we move to the age of print media in newspapers and magazines and pamphlets. When we find the ability to capture, replay, and rebroadcast sound, we move into the age of radio. And when we move into the era of being able to capture and replay images, we move into the age of film and television. So each evolution of the media is taking on the unique characteristics of the emerging technology. And so the question is, when we look at the internet, what does the internet mean for us? Now, for most broadcasts, if not all broadcasts, but also every other aspect of the traditional media, we simply use the internet as a big fat pipe down which to push the stuff that we're already broadcasting. The BBC has a fantastic on-demand service called iPlayer, which has been, you can watch any program that's been on in the last 7 days free of charge. Last year, there were over 1 billion programs streamed from the iPlayer. But that's all it is. It's using the internet as a pipe down which to push content that we've already pushed out on all these other platforms. So what are the unique characteristics of the internet? Because what's interesting is some big new entrants into our market have worked out the unique characteristics of the internet and are using them to their advantage. So if you look at the internet, one of the unique advantages, the unique creative competencies of the internet is its interactivity. Some of you may have known, many of you won't, that Microsoft have announced their plans to move into television. And their goal is to move not just to make television. They've got Steven Spielberg making the television version or the video version of Halo as a narrative experience, but they're also spending a significant amount of money and development time making genuinely interactive television. This is Microsoft, one of the biggest companies in the world. It's non-linear. What do I mean by non-linear? Well, if you look at a company like Netflix, one of these over-the-top providers, what they do with their original series is they don't give them out on a weekly basis at 9 o'clock in the evening as we do on a linear schedule. With House of Cards and Hemlock Grove and Orange is the New Black, they just said it's coming out on this date, and they put all of the episodes in the series out at the same time. If you want to watch all of them in a day, that's entirely up to you. If you want to watch them over 6 months, it's entirely up to you. That's one aspect of non-linear. But they also do a couple of other things. The first thing is, if you've watched any of their original series, every episode is a different length. Every single episode of House of Cards is a different length. That is so radical in terms of storytelling in broadcast media that, often I have to lie down just thinking about it. Because what it means is that you don't have to put the extra scene in that you don't really like in order to get the clock up to the full hour. Or you don't have to cut the scene out that you really, really want because the program's running slightly too long and you have to finish at 10 o'clock because there's a news bulletin. They've gone even further than that because they don't even call them episodes, they call them chapters. And each chapter doesn't have a recap of previously on whatever, because if you can't remember what happened before, just like with a book, you could just go back to the episode before, play the end, bring yourself up to speed and play on. So Netflix, new entrant, but cleaning up and using the non-linear dimension of the internet to full effect. And the other one is social. Amazon, the company that we buy books from, has gone into content production. They've set up a movie studio, they want to do children's programs, they want to do comedies, and they're going into stand-up comedy. Now, what Amazon says, if you've got a script, upload it onto our website, and we'll invite the crowd to come in and comment on your script. And we'll look at the comments from the crowd and the engagement from the crowd as one of those things that will help us determine whether or not this script has got what it takes to make it. And then if they commission your script, what they do all the way through the process is shoot these little test movies, low-cost versions of the movie, which they put back on the website and say, okay, here's a low-cost version of the movie, tell us what you think. Tell us which scenes are working for you, which scenes aren't working for you. And so they're engaging the wisdom of the crowd to help them, first of all, find new stories, but then improve and select the stories that they go forward with. And when they've decided which ones to pilot, they put those pilots back online and invite the crowd to watch them and comment on them and use that to decide what they're going to take to series. So, interactive, non-linear, social. The unique characteristics of the web that broadcasters have failed to engage with, and these big new entrants have stepped in and are moving forward. Now, it begs the question, why have we not moved when they have? And over the last 8 months, I've been going around my business, doing sessions with my staff, talking about this new digital future, and trying to understand, given the challenges that we face in the world that we're in and the opportunities of this new world, what's going on? Where can we go? And what's interesting when you do this exercise is, first of all, we do an exercise where we get them to describe the world as they can see it. And then you ask them 2 questions. The first one they find very easy to do, and the second one they find much harder. First exercise is describe the world. And they say things like confusing, challenging, opportunity, fast-moving, very high-tech. Words that all of us would probably use if we're standing back, fragmented. And the BBC is a head organisation. The really hard question, and the one that takes them much longer to answer, is how does it make you feel? When you look at this world that we're in, and this moment that we're in, how does it make you feel? And as a senior manager, I know most of the time we don't ask them how they feel at all. We say, here's the new world, let's get on and do it. When you actually ask them, how does it make you feel, there's a long pause, and then you get some interesting answers, and there's a sort of duality. On the plus side, they'll say empowered, excited, entrepreneurial, innovative. But then you also get out of touch, dated, complicated, scared. And I've done, 30, 40 of these sessions with groups all over the UK of different grades and different genres, and you always end up, broadly speaking, with these 2 sets of outcomes. There is an invigorating release, and there is a real fear of what the future might hold for them. And at the moment, the fear is winning. At the moment, the fear is winning. So let me explain why. Our business is on the business life cycle. Most of you have seen these curves. Most businesses start small. On the left-hand side, if they find a market, if they find an audience, they grow and they grow. And then they'll either flatten out at the top, some crater and die, some kick on to a new curve. A lot just trundle on at the top as mature, stable businesses. My business is in transition. So we have that blue curve for us is our analog, traditional broadcast business. That red curve is whatever our business might be in the new world of the internet. And on the blue curve, we're right up there at the top. We're a very mature industry, and that means we're quite hierarchical, we're quite matrix of lots of different functions, HR, IT, finance, cutting across silos and divisions. We've got lots of chiefs, chief creative officer, chief information officer, chief financial officer, chief operating officer. We're pretty slow moving. A lot of what we do is about reputational defense. We can't afford to slip up because we're right at the top of the curve. So we're quite risk averse. Companies on that red curve are absolutely the other way around. They want to move fast, they want to fail fast, they want to make a reputation, so they're swinging for the fences, and actually when they fail, that's a great learning opportunity. What's your title? I don't know, can you do the job? These are very low status, organizations that want to move much, much more quickly than we do. And the challenge that we have is we're asking the people on the blue curve to help lead us to the red curve. And what you run into are 4 common challenges and stumbling blocks, or roadblocks even, that stop them wanting to do that. The first one is, what's my role? If I'm the Chief Creative Officer on that blue curve, which I've just said is doing fantastically well, we're talking about a new golden age, what's my role on that new curve? Because this is all new technology. I mean, my kids are far more advanced than I am. So if I can't see what my role is on that new curve, why on earth am I going to lead? Why am I going to go, and why am I going to lead anybody else there? Second thing is about my status, not just my role, my status. I work in television. That's a pretty high status thing. You go to dinner party, what do you do? I work in television. That's fantastic. If you go to a dinner party, what do you do? I work in transmedia. Trans what? Sorry. There is a whole status issue that I think, as a leader, I put my hand up, we've ignored. Because our industry, I am the Chief Creative Officer because someone advertised that job and I applied for it. I haven't got any qualifications in media. I didn't study media at university. I haven't done any other there is no professional qualification for being a broadcaster. It's just I have a body of work that the people who interviewed me subjectively thought was a good body of work. But we all know, my wife hates The Sopranos and I love it. It doesn't mean she's right and I'm wrong, or vice versa. Our industry is highly subjective. And so you have no professional cover if you take what looks like a risky move, a risky gamble. The third thing is recognition. All of the recognition in our world is on the top curve. Anybody tell me what the big reward is, or the big award is for the online world? Everybody knows the Emmys, everybody knows the BAFTAs, the Webbies. A few people know the Webbies, okay. A few techies in here. But most people, when I go to the dinner party, they've never heard of the Webby. They want to know about the Emmys and the BAFTAs. Where are the big budgets? The big budgets are on the blue curve. What do the public pay for? They pay a television license. Or what do the government subsidize? Public television or public radio. It's all on the blue curve. All of the recognition is on the blue curve. And then finally, there's the economics. In commercial television, they talk about they don't want to give up their dollars on the blue curve for dimes on the red curve, or they don't want to give up $1 for 10 cents on the red curve. In public television, which is funding-wise a zero-sum game, any money you spend on the red curve has to come from the blue curve. And given that nobody on the blue curve very few people on the blue curve are rushing to get to the red curve, not only do you meet internal resistance when you try and do it, but you try and take something away from the audience that's paying for the blue curve to put it on a curve that they may not even access, and you run into all kinds of problems. We tried to close a radio station called Six Music. It had 60,000 listeners. And there was a storm of outrage. David Bowie complained. Government ministers who said they hadn't listened to it but didn't want us to close it. And in the end, we had to keep this radio station open, which only had 6,000 listeners. Now, as it happens, because we tried to close it, it's now very popular. And maybe there's a few other services we should try and close, and it will improve their popularity. But in public media, it's a really difficult game. Well, it's not even a game. It's a really difficult challenge to move resource from the blue curve that everybody understands to the red curve that lots of people don't understand. So, what are we going to do about it? I'm struck by the words of the tennis player, Arthur Ashe. African-American, won Wimbledon, the US Open, Australian Open, and he said, "Fear isn't an excuse to stand still. It's the impetus to step up and strike." And I think what we need to do, if we're going to play any part in this transmedia future, the broadcasters need to find ways of engaging their staff and the audience in building that new future. And I have a word for this. It's my own word, and that word is porosity. I don't think we want one big bang idea. I think we need to make lots of little holes inside our organization and in the interface between our organization and the outside world to let people and ideas through so that we can experiment fast, we can fail fast, and we can engage. Because remember, the characteristics of all those companies doing well on the web, interactivity, non-linear, social, they're all in a direct relationship, participatory relationship with the audience. We're not. We're a here it comes, get ready and catch it, hope you enjoy it. So we need a new relationship with the audience, but I'd go further and say we need a new relationship with our staff. Because even inside our staff, we've got lots of young people, or younger people, and those who are technically sort of minded, who go home. You know, it's easier for staff to do stuff at home than it is to do stuff at work. We actually say in the BBC, most people have got better technology at home than they do when they come to work because they refresh it more often. So what do I mean by porosity? So when I was at Travel Channel in the United States, trying to address that issue of economics, we set up something called the Travel Channel Academy. We needed video content for our website, and we needed it at a price point that the traditional production companies weren't prepared to work for. So we advertised, and we said to our viewers and our fans, if you're really passionate about travel, pay to come on this course, and if you can make good video, we'll buy it from you. And we created the Travel Channel Academy. We engaged our fans. They came on a 4-day course, and at the end of it, we identified people who are happy to work on projects on a project-by-project basis. We got great video at a much lower cost point. They got their feedback, those of them that had ability, and even those that didn't had a really good time. And we found a business model that enabled us to get good content from the web at a totally different price point. Second thing we did with the Academy is we actually took a decision to put all of our staff through it. So one way of making our staff aware of the transformation that's happening around them was to actually let them all do the Academy so they could see actually how easy it is to make, edit, and script a 2-minute video. And that transformed a lot of their understanding about digital. It was no longer a threat because they had a better understanding of what was going on and what was needed. Second one is the BBC. As I said, we have iPlayer, this massive on-demand service. But for the first time ever, we are now putting content in the on-demand service before it's gone out on air. We're doing it with comedy. This is a comedy called Bad Education, and that's available 7 days before transmission for people who want to watch it. And so far, the ratings outcomes have been pretty good, and we're looking to see what it means for the whole life cycle of the content. But for a company that gets a television license, for the first time, we're experimenting. What if we put our content out in advance and let people who wanted to come and consume it before we broadcast it on air? The third thing is something that we created to try and improve the porosity of our own organization. And it's called iCreate. And basically, it's an internal crowdsourcing website where we encourage our own staff to come up with ideas. So anybody in my business now who's got an idea has a place they can go where they can submit their idea, and anybody else in the business can come in and comment on it and help build it. I went to a session in Cardiff, and one of the women wrote on the feedback form, "This is the first time in 23 years of working for the BBC that anybody has asked me for my idea." Because we have a small group of people who are the creatives, but we have a lot of other people who work for us who feel that they're creative, who have ideas, and just want a place to share them. And in the period since we set up the site, we've got 3,000 staff. We've got about 1,600 people signed up. We've got about 300 ideas in the system. We've had our first commission already of something that's actually going to be made into a program. We have other stuff in active development. But we've also improved the engagement of our staff and their engagement in the process. The last example is the BBC Connected Studio. And this is one of those examples where we accept that we don't have the skills inside the BBC. And so what we've just done for the first time is taken one of our comedy projects and actually created a thing called a Connected Studio where we've gone into the outside world and said, okay, here is the project. Come to us with great ideas to turn this into a transmedia experience. And we had an open day or an open session. We then shortlisted 8 companies who went through a 2-day rapid prototyping exercise that we paid for, where we brought in audiences and we brought in actors so they could get constant feedback all the way through the process. And we've now gone to a full commission with an outside company. It's a great way of getting their ideas in and getting our people out. And it's another example of what I call this bigger idea of porosity, which is about trying to break down these big faces that we have in terms of our relationship with the outside world. So in terms of transmedia, we do live in an age of incredible potential. You know, the simple fact is now, anybody with a digital camera and access to the internet can be a broadcaster. Just as Gutenberg produced his Bible and transformed the relationship between the individual and the church, the internet and digital technology has transformed the relationship between the audience and the broadcaster. And it's up to the broadcasters to act. Thank you.